You watch the rocket climb, 45,000 kilograms, hurled into orbit with violence and precision, the pinnacle of human engineering. But the supermassive black hole at the center of our galaxy, Sagittarius A, weighs 8.266 times 10 to the 36th kilograms. Your rocket, 5.444 times 10 to the negative 33rd of that mass. 32 orders of magnitude separate your triumph from cosmic irrelevance. The uranium-238 in the ground beneath the launch pad, half-life 4.468 billion years, will outlive every mission you ever planned. The universe doesn't notice your launch. It never will. This is a monument to a rounding error. We built machines that come home. We point them at the void, send them screaming through fire and friction, and they return. Upright, controlled, obedient. The first stage separates at 70 kilometers. It flips, reignites, descends through the atmosphere like a needle threading chaos. The landing legs deploy. Contact. A pillar of metal standing on a concrete pad, engines still glowing. We call this mastery. The engineers, thousands of them, have spent decades refining this choreography. Billions of dollars converted into precision, into control. New Glenn, scheduled for Q4 2024, represents the distillation of careers, entire lives poured into the question, how do we make the return as routine as the launch? We measure our success in dollars per kilogram, a number that shrinks with each iteration, each landing. Cost efficiency, the ultimate metric of progress in a species obsessed with optimization. But this number only exists here. At coordinates 28.4659 degrees north, 80.5445 degrees west, a single point on a sphere with 510 million square kilometers of surface. A dot, a launch complex, a place where gravity pulls at 9.8 meters per second squared, an atmosphere provides exactly enough resistance to make controlled descent possible. We have optimized for one location, one gravity well, one set of physical conditions that will never repeat anywhere else we might go. The rocket returns because the Earth allows it to return. Because the physics here, unique, local, coincidental, permit this exact dance of thrust and drag and deceleration. We did not conquer the forces. We learned to move within their narrow permissions. And still, we speak of roads, infrastructure, highways to orbit, the language of civilization applied to the act of escaping it, as if the void were simply another territory to colonize, another frontier with rest stops and supply chains. The narrative we tell ourselves is one of expansion, of becoming multiplanetary through sheer engineering will. The reusable booster is the first brick in a bridge we believe extends outward, forever. But the destination is not waiting for infrastructure. The destination is expanding, accelerating, indifferent to whether we build roads or cathedrals or monuments to our own cleverness. The void does not care that we can land a rocket. It does not notice our cost per kilogram metrics. It does not slow down. We have created an intellectual shield, a belief structure built from titanium and carbon fiber and successful test flights. Every landing reinforces it. Every reused booster whispers the same lie, that our intelligence is the variable that matters, that the universe presents obstacles, not boundaries, that cleverness, given enough time, enough fuel, enough iterative design, can overcome the fundamental nature of distance itself. The rocket stands on the pad, vertical, victorious, proof that we have bent this small corner of reality to our will. And we do not ask what happens when the corner ends. We do not ask what reusability means in a place with no pad to return to, no atmosphere to brake against, no coordinates, no second stage waiting with a full tank, because the supply chain still terminates here. At this dot, on this sphere, in this gravity well, we have never truly left. The comfort is not in the technology. The comfort is in the return. In knowing that the machine, no matter how far it climbs, comes back. That the launch is temporary, that the void is something we visit, not somewhere we stay. We have built the most sophisticated method ever devised for remaining exactly where we are, and we call it progress. You've launched something small from the surface of a rock, and now you're being told where that rock sits. First, the cavity. Your solar system floats inside the local bubble, a pocket of gas so thin it barely registers on most instruments. 300 light-years wide, a hollow carved out by ancient stars that detonated long before your species learned to stand upright. You live inside a scar. This bubble isn't isolated. It rests on the edge of something larger, something absent, the local void. A region of space so underdense, so devoid of matter, that its diameter spans 150 million light-years. Your galaxy is drifting out of it, slowly, like a single red blood cell escaping a wound that has no edges. You are exiting a region defined entirely by what isn't there. Your galaxy, this swirl of 400 billion stars, orbits a center 26,673 light-years away. One full rotation takes 230 million years, a galactic year. Homo sapiens has existed for 0.0013 of that rotation. You haven't even completed a single lap around your own structure. 700 million light-years from here lies the Boötes Void. Picture a sphere 330 million light-years across, a volume so vast that under normal circumstances, under the expected distribution of matter in this universe, it should contain over 2,000 galaxies. It contains 60. The mathematics are simple. The volume is 236,000 cubic megaparsecs. The mass that should be there, compressed hydrogen, dark matter halos, galactic seeds, is equivalent to tens of thousands of galaxies identical to your own. But it isn't there. No cataclysm removed it. No explosion cleared the space. The void simply is, like a missing organ in an otherwise functioning body. You look at the map and see a hole where the architecture of reality forgot to build. 10 billion light-years away, so far that the light reaching your instruments left its source before your planet had fully cooled. There is a wall, the Hercules Corona Borealis Great Wall, a galactic filament so incomprehensibly vast it spans more than 10% of the diameter of the entire observable universe. Galaxies strung together like neurons in a frozen dead mind, stretching across a distance that causality itself would require billions of years to traverse. Your rocket was designed to travel a few hundred kilometers, vertically. The structures surrounding you are measured in light centuries, light millennia. Distances so extreme that even traveling at the speed of information itself, the fastest speed permitted by physical law, you would die of old age billions of times over before crossing them. You built a machine to escape the surface of one grain of sand, and the universe has shown you the desert. You're watching light from a dead star. Not metaphorically, not poetically, literally, you are staring at a ghost. The universe is expanding. Dark energy stretches the fabric of space-time itself, pulling galaxies apart faster than physics should allow. There is a threshold, 16.5 billion light-years from where you sit, and beyond that line, galaxies are accelerating away from us at speeds exceeding light itself. The photons they release today will never arrive. They will chase us forever across a void that grows faster than they can travel. Our cosmic horizon isn't expanding, it's collapsing. The universe is disappearing. You are on a raft in an ocean that stretches. The islands you see on the horizon aren't just distant, they are being erased from existence. The water between you and them grows at a rate no engine could overcome. You could build a rocket that burns for 1 trillion years, and it would not matter. Space-time doesn't care about your thrust. It expands beneath you while you crawl forward, and the destination recedes faster than you approach. You cannot outrun the universe itself. In 2009, astronomers detected a gamma-ray burst. They cataloged it as GRB 090423. The explosion that created it was so violent, it briefly outshone half the observable universe. When they calculated the distance, they found something hollow. The star that died to produce that light lived 8.7 billion years before the Earth formed. Let that collapse in your skull for a moment. Before our planet existed, before our sun ignited, before the dust cloud that would become our solar system even began to coalesce, that star had already lived its entire life. It fused hydrogen, it aged, it detonated, and then silence, darkness, oblivion. We are not watching an event. We are watching a tombstone, a fossil carved in light. That star has no concept of your existence. It cannot. It died billions of years before the atoms in your body were forged, and yet you saw it die. There is a star called HD 140283. Astronomers call it Methuselah. It is 14.46 billion years old, almost as old as the universe itself. It formed from hydrogen so pure, so untouched, that it predates nearly every element heavier than helium. No carbon, no oxygen, no iron, just the pristine exhale of the Big Bang, collapsing under its own gravity. It has been burning since the universe was an infant. It watched our galaxy form. It witnessed the Milky Way's spiral arms coil into shape over billions of years. It saw our sun ignite 4.6 billion years ago, a bright, unremarkable flicker in a sea of 100 billion other flames. It will watch that same sun expand into a red giant, boil our oceans, and devour the Earth. And it will still be burning. Your entire species, Homo sapiens, has existed for 300,000 years. Methuselah has existed for 14.46 billion. Your civilization is not a chapter in its story. You are not even a footnote. You are a few molecules of ink smudged across a single letter in a library that spans eons. Every war you fought, every monument you've built, every philosophy, every equation, every scream into the void, Methuselah has not noticed. It does not blink on a timescale you could comprehend. You are less than a blink. Imagine the Milky Way placed at the center of the Boötes Void. It is a region of space 330 million light-years across, containing almost nothing. No galaxies, no stars, no clouds of hydrogen waiting to collapse, just emptiness. If you stood on Earth in that void, the night sky would betray you. Andromeda, our nearest major galactic neighbor, currently 2.5 million light-years away, would not be visible. It would be hundreds of millions of light-years distant. The sky would not be filled with stars. It would be almost perfectly black, a handful of dim points, silence, isolation made visible. You would have no evidence the universe was anything more than your galaxy and the dark. Early civilizations would never develop astronomy. There would be nothing to observe. No wandering planets, no eclipses, no reason to believe in a cosmos at all. You would live and die convinced you were alone, because by every measure available to you, you would be. The void doesn't care if you understand it. It simply is. The WMAP satellite gave us a photograph, not of stars, not of galaxies, a photograph of the universe itself at 379,000 years old. The cosmic microwave background, light that has traveled for 13.77 billion years to reach your eyes. Your species has existed for 300,000 years. That is 0.002% of the time that light has been traveling. You are not witnessing history. You are witnessing the faint, degraded echo of an event so ancient that calling it the beginning barely holds meaning. The universe was a featureless soup of hydrogen plasma when that light was born. No atoms, no chemistry, no possibility of you. And yet, there it is, still arriving, still whispering. You are a brief afterthought in a story that began before thought was possible. The universe does not remember you. It has not noticed you. It will not mourn you. But you, standing on this raft, in this stretching ocean, staring at tombstones carved in light, you noticed it, for whatever that's worth, the silence. Every radio telescope pointed at the void, every frequency scanned, Every promising star system cataloged and observed. Nothing. Not a transmission, not a whisper, not even the accidental radio bleed of a civilization learning to broadcast. We are sitting in a galaxy that should be thick with voices, and yet we hear only ourselves. This is the Fermi paradox made manifest. The question that keeps cosmologists awake in the dark. And the most disturbing answer we have come up with is not that we are looking in the wrong places. It is that we are looking at graveyards. They call it the Great Filter, a barrier, an execution threshold embedded somewhere in the evolutionary chain between primordial chemistry and galaxy-spanning empire. Something that stops life cold. Not sometimes, not occasionally, every time. The question cosmologists obsess over is not whether the filter exists. The math suggests it must. The question is where it sits in the timeline of intelligence, because that determines whether we have already survived the unsurvivable or whether we are still walking toward the blade. There are two possibilities. The first is almost comforting in its cruelty. The filter is behind us. Life itself, the leap from inert chemistry to self-replicating molecules, is a 1 in a trillion accident. An aberration so statistically improbable that it has happened only once in our entire galactic neighborhood. This would mean we are the first, the only, the universe's single roll of the dice that came up conscious. The silence is not a mystery, it is confirmation. We are utterly alone, not because civilizations destroy themselves, but because they never arise in the first place. We are the exception, the fluke, the biological equivalent of a quantum fluctuation that somehow became aware of itself. And if this is true, then our existence is not a triumph. It is a responsibility so heavy it borders on cosmic horror. Because we are it, the only flame in an otherwise lightless void. But there is a second possibility, and it is so much worse. The filter is ahead of us. Every species that reaches our level of technological development, one capable of splitting the atom, of manipulating quantum states, of building reusable rockets and probing the fabric of space-time itself, they hit the same invisible tripwire. And they vanish, not from war, not from plague, not from the slow decay of empires or the exhaustion of resources. Those are merely symptoms. The real killer is the technology itself, the experiments we run, the energies we unleash, the boundaries we push because we are curious, because we must know. There is a phenomenon in quantum field theory called vacuum metastability. It sounds abstract, academic, the kind of thing you file away as theoretical concern. But the measurements we have taken of the Higgs boson, its mass sitting at 125 giga-electron volts per speed of light squared, they suggest something horrifying. The vacuum of our universe may not be stable. It is metastable, a false ground state, like a pencil balanced perfectly on its tip, motionless, suspended, functional, until the smallest vibration sends it tumbling. The true vacuum, the actual lowest energy state of reality, exists at a lower level. We are living in the high-energy version, the universe that should have already collapsed into its most stable configuration, but has not yet. Not because it is impossible, because the trigger has not been pulled. And that trigger could be anything. A particle collision at energies just slightly beyond our current accelerators. An exotic physics experiment. A quantum tunneling event initiated by an intelligence probing the boundaries of what matter can do. Somewhere, anywhere, in our galaxy, in another. A bubble of true vacuum forms. It expands at the speed of light. No warning, no slowing down. The bubble does not destroy matter in the traditional sense. It does something worse. It rewrites the fundamental constants. The strength of electromagnetic force, the mass of the electron, the binding energy of atomic nuclei. Every law of physics that allows stars to burn, planets to form, chemistry to exist, erased, overridden. Inside the bubble, atoms do not hold together. Particles do not interact the way they did a microsecond before. There is no heat, no cold, no light. Just the deletion of reality. And because it expands at light speed, you would never see it coming. The bubble's edge is the last photon your dying atoms could emit. There is no escape velocity, no shielding, no warning signal traveling ahead to give you time to, what? There is nothing you could do. It may have already begun. Somewhere in the observable universe, a civilization just like ours may have run one experiment too many. The bubble may be spreading toward us right now, a sphere of annihilation growing at 300,000 kilometers per second. We will not know until the moment we cease to exist. And this is the true horror of the filter being ahead of us. Every intelligent species reaches the same point, the same threshold of knowledge. They unlock the same forces. They ask the same questions. And in doing so, they unravel the only universe capable of asking. Our continued existence is not proof that we are safe. It is not evidence of our ingenuity, our caution, our wisdom. It is merely evidence that the trigger has not yet been pulled. We are the pencil still balanced on its tip, motionless, suspended, waiting. We built telescopes to listen for gods. What we found was silence, cold, absolute, and indifferent. SETI is not a search for intelligence. It is a vigil at the bedside of a universe that has already flatlined. 93 billion light-years of static, and somewhere in that void, we convinced ourselves there must be a voice, a signal, a confirmation that we are not alone in the machinery of causality. It is the most profound optimism ever conceived by a species that learned to measure its own extinction. We shout into the dark. The Arecibo message, humanity's postcard to the cosmos, degrades into background noise within a handful of light years. The inverse square law does not negotiate. It does not care about intent or meaning. A transmission spreads like ripples on an infinite pond, diluting with every meter traveled until it becomes indistinguishable from the hiss of dead stars and the wave afterglow of creation itself. We are not broadcasting, we are whispering into a hurricane. And the hurricane is the structure of space-time itself. So we invented a ladder. The Kardashev scale, a taxonomy of empire. Type 1, a civilization that controls the energy of its planet. Type 2, one that harnesses its star. Type 3, a galaxy bent to the will of conscious beings. It is architecture without foundation, a blueprint for godhood drawn on the back of a napkin in a bar at the heat death of the universe. Climb to Type 3 and you are still a prisoner. The light cone does not expand. Entropy does not forgive. You have simply built a larger cell, lined with the energy of 1 trillion suns, and called it progress. The desperate reach for loopholes. The Alcubierre warp drive, a mathematical sculpture, elegant and impossible. It promises to compress space-time in front of a vessel and expand it behind, creating a bubble that surfs the fabric of reality faster than light without ever breaking the speed limit. But it requires exotic matter, matter with negative mass, matter that may not exist outside the margins of a physicist's notebook. It is not engineering, it is theology, praying to the constants of nature for a miracle they were never designed to grant. And so we compromise. We reuse rockets. Landing a booster on a barge in the Atlantic, precision, elegance, efficiency reclaimed from the jaws of waste. It is a beautiful microcosm of futility, fighting local inefficiency while drowning in the absolute, unavoidable inefficiency of existence itself. The second law of thermodynamics. Entropy increases. Always. The universe does not recycle. It spends itself into oblivion. And every joule we save is a rounding error on a balance sheet that has already been closed. Mainstream science has made peace with the cage. It focuses on solvable problems, better spectrometers, cleaner propellants, sharper images of distant worlds. These are not acts of surrender, they are coping mechanisms. We build better tools to explore a prison whose bars are the fundamental constants of nature. The speed of light, Planck's constant, the cosmological constant. We measure them with exquisite precision, not because we believe they will change, but because knowing the exact dimensions of your cell is the only dignity left when escape is impossible. We bargain with asymptotes. We approach solutions we will never reach, drawing closer, always closer, to limits that were written into the universe at the moment of its birth. And in that bargaining, we find meaning. Not freedom, not transcendence, just the cold, quiet work of mapping the walls. The stelliferous era will end. The age of stars, the age you are living in right now, is not permanent. The longest-lived red dwarfs, faint embers like Proxima Centauri, will burn for 10 trillion years. That's 700 times longer than the current age of the universe. And then they too will go dark. Every star that will ever ignite has already been born, or soon will be. The universe has nearly exhausted its fuel. What remains is a slow, methodical burn, a death rattle stretched across cosmic time. When the last red dwarf finally flickers out, the universe will not explode. It will not collapse. It will simply stop glowing. The second law of thermodynamics does not negotiate. Entropy, the measure of disorder, the tax on all structure, will always increase. Every time energy is used, some of it becomes irretrievable. Heat dissipates into the void. Complexity unravels. The universe's ledger is being balanced, and the balance is always zero. This is thermodynamic oblivion. No fire can burn without fuel. No engine can run without a gradient. And the universe is an engine running out of hills to roll down. In 10 to the 40th years, a 1 followed by 40 zeros, protons themselves may decay. Not collapse, not explode, decay. The very building blocks of matter, the particles that make up every atom in your body, every grain of sand, every planet, every star, all of it will dissolve into a thin vapor of leptons and photons. Baryonic matter, the substance of the physical world, will cease to exist. The architecture of reality will be dismantled at the quantum level. Your bones, the launch pad, the ocean, Earth's core, the iron in dead stars, all of it will unravel like a structure made of ice left in the sun, except there will be no sun. And still, the universe will not be finished. In 10 to the 100th years, the last supermassive black holes, those final gravitational monuments, the densest objects that ever existed, will evaporate. Hawking radiation will bleed them dry, one quantum particle at a time, over a timescale so vast it makes the lifetime of stars look like a lightning flash. When the last black hole evaporates, the last source of gravity strong enough to hold information will vanish. What remains is equilibrium. Cold, dark, empty, no stars, no planets, no structures, no gradients, no memory. The record of the New Glenn launch, the telemetry data, the metal fragments, the exhaust particles scattered into the solar wind, will not simply be lost. It will be erased, not metaphorically, physically. The information itself will dissolve into the background radiation of a universe that has reached maximum entropy. There will be no difference between where the rocket once was and where it was not. Humanity's existence will not be forgotten. It will be unmeasurable. And yet, here, now, in this narrow sliver of time before the stars go out, you built something, a machine, complex, improbable, filled with information and intent. You gathered metals from dead stars, burned refined hydrocarbons, and forced mass upward against the gradient of a gravity well. You defied entropy, temporarily, locally, beautifully. The second law does not forbid order. It merely demands payment. And the payment is always heat, radiated into the void, irretrievable. So what was the point? Was it to win? To carve a permanent mark into the universe that would outlast time itself? Or was it simply to have built something at all, knowing with absolute certainty that it would not last. Perhaps the defiance was never meant to be eternal. Perhaps it was only meant to be witnessed.